Thank you for coming out this evening. All of us here on this blustery, cold night. It actually seems really appropriate because the very first one I did on water storage was a night that was pouring down rain. But so the first one and the last one is all on a rainy night. I don't know if that portends anything, but I find it interesting. This evening's lecture is on light search and rescue. Light meaning not heavy, not doing it in the daytime. Actually, a little of both. The reason that we call it light search and rescue is because this is not search and rescue for professional responders, the people who run the boats and go searching the mountains and dogs and all that kind of stuff. It is designed for moms, dads, and people in neighborhoods to take care of each other, take care of themselves, and take care of each other in the event of disasters. What we're going to cover is basically three topics. One is a fireman's term, which is called size up. I also like to refer to it as stop, think, and act. In my CPR first aid courses, we teach a section which is the same thing, which is stop, thinking, and then acting, putting it into operation. The firemen call it size up. So we're going to talk about size up, we're going to talk about searching, and then we're going to talk about rescuing. Those are searching and rescue are two different things, although we can talk about search and rescue as one entity, but it's actually two separate things. The experience from previous disasters has shown that immediately after every disaster, the first response to track victims is spontaneous, untrained, and well-intentioned persons who run into the site of a collapse in an attempt to free the victims. More often than not, these spontaneous rescue efforts result in serious injuries and compounded problems. However well-meaning, rescue efforts should be planned and practiced in advance. The decision to attempt a rescue should be based on two factors. I like reading that just because I thought that was very succinct. And that one, the two factors is, one, your own personal safety. Be as safe as possible. The second one is doing the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. When your own personal safety, one of the things I learned when I was teaching in a prison, no, I wasn't in prison, I was teaching in a prison, I was in a prison, teaching in a prison, was from one of the guards was, we always want to be the first responder, not the second victim. And so we want to make sure that when we do something like that, we're not putting ourselves in jeopardy. Oftentimes, especially in emergency situations, we kind of think we have a big red S in our chest, that we're supermen and we can go in and do whatever we want to, which is not necessarily the case. And so if we don't think about and plan our own personal safety, that we could be just as trapped or just as in peril as the person that we're going to save. And then somebody has to come save us, putting somebody else's life in peril. And so your own personal safety is number one, and then doing the greatest amount of good to the most amount of people is number two. How we do that, how we maintain our own personal safety, is by doing something that's called size up. Size up is basically a multi-part effort. What we can do with that size up is kind of multi-part, and we'll go through this. Step number one is to gather the facts. The facts being, we'll start with what time of the day and what day of the week it would be. For example, if you had, and I'll just use an earthquake. We're here in Southern California. Earthquakes are very prevalent, and that would be an event. But you can, a tornado, a flood, or anything else. I'm going to use the earthquake. So an earthquake happened at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You can be relatively sure that most of the home residences around you will probably be empty. People are at work. Simple to say. But if you happen to live next to an auto body shop or something like that, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, your next door neighbor's house might be empty, but the auto body shop is probably going to have people in it. And so you might want to channel your efforts, rather than looking in your neighborhood and looking for people who may or may not be home from work, to go to the auto body shop or to go next door where a place of work could be, because that's where they would be. Conversely, if it happens to be 3 o'clock in the morning, there's not going to be anybody in the auto shop. They're going to be at home. And so the time of day and the day of week would make a great deal of difference. For example, if it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, people may or may not be home. Also, what time of the day might it be? People are at home, are at work, what kind of buildings, those kind of things. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or let's say earlier than that. Say 1 o'clock in the afternoon, if the next door happened to be a library next to your place of residence. A library at 1 o'clock in the afternoon probably won't have many people in it. But at 3:30, when all the schools get out, it might be filled with school kids. So that makes why day of the week and time of the day make a difference. The type of structure makes a great deal of difference. If it is a residential house, they do very well in earthquakes, but a reinforced masonry brick building doesn't do very well. And so what it's made of might have a great deal to do with how you are gathering the facts on this building that you're going to look at. The construction type, is it a prefab stand-up building or is it a stick house? Those will have a lot of difference on the facts that you gather. Weather. If it's pouring down and windy and cold like it is today, how is that going to affect you as a rescuer? How is that going to impact your rescue efforts? Making it more difficult, making the people that you deal with cold and wet and those kind of things. And so these are things to take into account. And the last one is the hazards. Remember I told you have to go to that auto body shop? There's probably in an auto body shop, there's probably acetylene and oil and gas and those kind of things you have to deal with, as opposed to going to somebody's house, you wouldn't have to deal with those kind of things. Okay, so then you want to assess and communicate the damage. You want to go around, look around the building and find out what's wrong with the building, and then do kind of an assessment of the general damage that you see. Is the exterior of the building lightly damaged, moderately damaged, or heavily damaged? Each one of those, light, moderate, or heavy, will indicate what it is that we're supposed to do. It's like, okay, if it is, then my job is. And we'll kind of go over that. Okay, so what would you say is, if our response is light damage, then we're supposed to locate, triage, and remove all victims possible and remove them to treatment areas to be handled by either medical professionals or a medical triage team if you happen to have one. Moderate damage, it's a little different. We would probably go in and help people, but we would not send every one of our team in there. Let's say you had 4 or 5 or 6 volunteers. You would not send them all into the building because there might be some danger to them. So you would leave some out and send some in, so just in case for safety. Heavy damage, our object as lay rescuers, as lay search and rescue people, is not to go into a building that is heavily damaged. For your own personal safety. In fact, our job would be to make sure that we try and keep everybody out of the building as much as possible so that no other people might get injured. In fact, in the Northridge earthquake, we went to go volunteer there. I think it's like 3 days afterwards. I think it happened on a Tuesday and we went on a Saturday, 3 or 4 days later. We were instructed not to go into any structures at all. Under no circumstances, depending upon, we were supposed to hand out literature to the people there, and we were instructed not to go into anybody's house whatsoever, just because of aftershocks or anything else. And that was, you know, regardless of what damage we may or may not have seen, but we were instructed not to go into any of them for our own personal safety.